provide stronger protections for both academic freedom and freedom of speech.
Senator Ruston. Debate will be in continuation. Questions of that notice. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. Today, hundreds of thousands of Australian women are marching for justice, raising their voices, saying enough is enough, that sexism, sexual harassment and sexual assault must stop. Instead of joining these women just metres from the front entrance, the Minister for Women sat in this chamber for the debate on a bill she had no responsibility for. Why?
The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I welcome the exercise of open democracy that all of those who have participated today, men and women, have taken up to provide their views, both in demonstration and through the form of a petition. And the Parliament and the Government will, of course, give appropriate consideration to the March for Justice petition.
Order, Senator.
The process of Parliament and of being a minister means that we meet with hundreds of people every year in the Parliament. And it's the responsibility of any elected government to form positions on those important issues by working through those carefully as a government through the Parliament. It's what we are elected to do. It's our responsibility to listen to the concerns of all Australians. Both the Prime Minister and I have sought to do that with organisers of today's protest directly and to hear from them directly in a number of ways. I do take those concerns very seriously, as do my coalition colleagues. And the Prime Minister's offer of that meeting with organisers still stands.
Supplementary question, Senator Wong. Order. Senator Wong.
Instead of listening to the hundreds of thousands of women marching for justice by joining them on the lawns in front of Parliament House, the Prime Minister remained in this building. Why?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. I think the Prime Minister has said in his comments on this matter that it is not his usual approach to engage in an action such as that outside the chamber. That is not his usual approach, but he has, on a number of occasions, a number of different representatives of community and on a number of different issues, always sought to offer the opportunity for a private meeting directly with the Prime Minister, the highest office holder in our system, the highest office holder in this country.
Order on my left.
In the context of this process, he has done the same, has offered that opportunity to those who have organised today's protest and to those who wish to raise these issues.
Senator Wong, a final supplementary question.
Ms Brittany Higgins spoke to the March for Justice on Parliament House lawns today. She spoke with great courage, and she said, and I quote, "This isn't a political problem, it is a human problem." Will the Morrison government stop treating this as a political issue and start listening to Australian women?
Order. Order.
And start listening to Australian women.
Order. Order. I need to be able to hear the question. Order.
And start listening to the Australian women who are saying across this country enough is enough.
Senator, order. Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I have had the opportunity to scan Ms Higgins' remarks today, and there is a range of those statements that she has made today with which I agree, and in fact the concerns that she has raised over recent weeks with which I also agree. It's one of the reasons the government has worked closely with those opposite, with those around this chamber indeed, in support of the development of an independent review of this workplace, its cultures, its unique qualities, to specifically and directly address these issues, because we do take this very, very seriously. We have heard those concerns, and my own personal remarks, which I am very happy to repeat in this chamber, Mr President, are that we must own, as parliamentarians, all of us, these problems. We must own the failings that have caused these or enabled these events to occur, and we must own the solutions.
Senator Payne. Senator Askew.
My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. Can the Minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government is helping people to have the tools and confidence to ensure that disrespectful behaviours are not learned in childhood?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Askew for her very important question. I'm very pleased today to be able to advise the chamber that last night the first ads in stage 3 of the Stop It at the Start campaign began airing on national television. We did this along with a number of other measures to make sure that we gave the Australian public the tools and the confidence to be able to call out disrespectful behaviour when they see it. Because we know that early intervention is absolutely the key in giving adults the opportunity to make sure that they can play a role in making sure that all Australians feel safe in their own home, in their communities and online. Last week, to mark International Women's Day, Minister Payne and I announced and launched the third phase of this campaign, which is absolutely targeted at the prevention of family and domestic violence perpetrated against women and their children. What the Stop It at the Start campaign does is it challenges disrespectful attitudes and behaviours that can often be learnt in childhood, and if left unchecked may escalate into violence. And specifically the campaign is about telling Australians to unmute themselves, to speak up. If you see disrespectful behaviour, don't ignore it, don't excuse it, you need to speak up and call it out. We know that research which we've conducted shows that 4 out of 5 of us agree that disrespectful behaviour and violence against women is absolutely driven by disrespectful behaviour. But many people do not feel confident to call out that disrespectful behaviour when they see it, because each and every one of us does have a role to play in making sure that every one of us feels safe. So taking action on this issue may seem overwhelming, but if we all take small steps together and we show respect, then maybe we actually can change the dial here, because we know that not all disrespectful behaviour results in violence, but all violence has started with disrespectful behaviour.
Order. Senator Askew, a supplementary question.
Thank you.
Order. Order. Senator Askew has the call. Order on my right. Senator Askew.
Can the Minister explain how the Morrison government is supporting Australians who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing domestic violence?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very
Order
much,
at the rear of the chamber.
Mr President. There is no excuse for family or domestic violence. And last year, during the COVID pandemic, we were faced with a potential crisis which we sought to respond to by providing $150 million of domestic violence response package to make sure that the states and territories had the frontline capacity to be able to respond to any increases in domestic violence as a result of the lockdowns from the COVID pandemic. This is in addition to the $340 million that we have a record investment into the Fourth Action Plan, and also the guaranteeing of the ongoing commitment to the 1800 Respect 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, and making sure that future funding was locked in perpetuity. We're currently in the process of and we're consulting on the next plan, which will commence in 2022. And we want to make sure that we listen to all Australians, all people that are impacted, to make sure that we have the best possible plan going forward.
Senator Askew, a final supplementary question.
Can the Minister advise what services are available for people experiencing domestic, family or sexual violence?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, we certainly understand that reaching out for help can be quite difficult for people. So to make sure that free and confidential advice is at the end of the phone at all times, we have funded the 1800 Respect and will continue to make sure that this service is available to every single Australian who may wish to access advice, counselling, support, or just merely to find out what they should do next in a situation of domestic violence. As I said, during the coronavirus lockdown, there was a shift how people decided that they wanted to respond, and we saw a significant increase in the number of people that were seeking to use online and telephone services in a way of accessing support. The National Manager of 1800 Respect, Melanie Sheehan, said that more people were calling the service in the very late hours, closer to midnight, and we also saw an increase in people contacting us via web chat, as this may be when and how people feel more comfortable or safer to seek that support.
Senator Farrell.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne. Last week, after months of anxiety for the tourism sector, the government finally released their package for the tourism industry when JobKeeper ends. Why did the Morrison government announce a package that, as the Australian Tourism Industry Council has said, will, and I quote, fail to stem major job losses and closures now occurring among many small, family-run and larger tourism businesses?
The Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thanks Senator Farrell for his question. Mr President, the Australian Government's tourism and aviation package, a $1.2 billion package, combined with, of course, our vaccine rollout, which is underway, is part of the government's National Economic Recovery Plan. And what that means is, for the tourism sector, in many ways, the recovery will be driven by Australians holidaying at home until we are able to re-engage with the international tourism sector. And so it does, I acknowledge, Senator Farrell, continue to be a very challenging time for our tourism and travel sector. So in addition to the record levels of economic support that we have provided during COVID-19, including JobKeeper and small business cash payments of up to $100,000, which has sustained literally hundreds of thousands of tourism businesses and jobs across Australia. The tourism and aviation package, Mr President, provides further targeted assistance to help the tourism sector, to help them rebound and to save as many jobs as possible. What we will see with Australia's airlines, with hotels, with caravan parks, with restaurants and bars, with travel agents and with tourism operators is a push from Australian domestic tourists as part of that new support package. And, Mr President, that mix of half-price airline tickets, of cheaper loans for business, of direct support to keep planes in the air and airline workers in their jobs is a bridge back to a normal way of life for Australians. So the centrepiece of the program, Mr President, is a demand-driven program of 800,000 half-price airfares to get Australians travelling, to support tourism operators, businesses, travel agents and airlines who continue to do it tough through COVID-19 while our international borders remain closed. It means taking more tourists to our hotels and cafes.
The answer has expired. Senator Farrell, a supplementary question.
Yes, I do have one. Thank you, Mr President. In response to the only demand-driving element of the proposal, the chair of the Tourism Restart Task Force, Dr Jeremy Johnson AM, has said, and I quote, "The discount airfares will do nothing for tour operators, travel agents and wholesalers." Is Dr Johnson correct?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm not familiar with Dr Johnson, but what I do know is that the tourism package itself will take more tourists to our hotels and our cafes, taking tours, exploring basically their own backyard. That does mean more jobs and opportunities for investment from the tourism and aviation sectors.
Senator Green.
It is important for local communities, especially in regional Australia, because we will continue to financially support flights which are so key to health services, to employment opportunities and to social activities. The half-price ticket program will initially operate to 13 key regions, which includes the Gold Coast, Cairns and Townsville, the Whitsundays and Mackay region, both Proserpine and Hamilton Island, the Sunshine Coast, Darwin, Lassiter and Alice Springs, Launceston, Hobart, Devonport and Burnie, Broome, Avalon, Merimbula and Adelaide and Kangaroo Island. Now, Mr President, in this chamber in recent weeks and months, I have responded to questions on these issues, particularly around Tasmania, particularly around Queensland, and I note that in my—
Senator Payne, order across the chamber. Senator Farrell, a final supplementary question.
If you can please make sure the minister keeps within her time. Thank you, Mr President. I do have a further supplementary question. The Accommodation Association of Australia has stated the lack of support in this package will result in the loss of jobs and slow our recovery once borders open. Why has the government abandoned 300,000 Australian workers?
Senator Payne.
I absolutely reject the premise of Senator Farrell's question, Mr President. There's a number of other new measures in the support package which I hadn't previously had an opportunity to speak to, including the expansion of the SME Loan Guarantee Scheme as part of our commitment to support up to $40 billion in lending to small and medium enterprises, precisely the sorts of business that Senator Farrell is referring to, I presume. Under the existing scheme, over 35,000 loans worth more than $3 billion have already been provided, which are helping thousands of businesses get to the other side of this pandemic. What the SME scheme, recovery loan scheme will benefit from is an increased government guarantee, increasing from the current 50-50 split between the governments and the banks to an 80-20 split. Mr President, we also see the support provided through the new international aviation support, helping Australia's international passenger airlines to maintain more than 8,000 core international aviation jobs, support for regular passenger airports to meet their domestic security screening costs.
Answer has expired. Senator Small.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. In the 14 days since the Prime Minister has released the final report from the Royal Commission into aged—
Senator Small, I can't hear the question. Senator Small, you can commence the question again. I noted who it was directed to.
Thanks, Mr President. In the 14 days since the Prime Minister has released it, can the Minister please update the Senate on the final report from the Royal Commission into aged care quality and safety?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thanks, Senator Small, for your question. The final report, Mr President, of the Royal Commission was provided to the Australian Government on the 26th of February and publicly released following the tabling in the Parliament on the 1st of March. It is a very significant report. The final report, Care, Dignity and Respect, comprises 8 volumes, totalling more than 2,500 pages and includes 148 recommendations. The Government thanks the Royal Commissioners, the Honourable Tony Pagoni, QC, Lynelle Briggs, AO, and the Honourable Richard Tracy, AM, RFD, QC, for their considerable work in conducting the Royal Commission and to all of those who contributed throughout the course of the inquiry. The Royal Commission's report provided some very difficult reading. I thank all those brave individuals, families, carers, aged care workers who gave evidence to the Commission under difficult circumstances. Mr President, and now we owe it to all of them to act on the recommendations of the report and acknowledge the significant and sweeping proposals required to reform the aged care sector. Mr President, we must do better. It was this government that called the Royal Commission, and it will be this government that delivers. We will not shy away, Mr President, from implementing the reforms needed to deliver the care our senior Australians require and deserve. The scale and scope of the report and the expectations of the Australian community demand a comprehensive understanding of its outcomes and its recommendations. We intend to provide a full response to the report by the 31st of May, as the recommendations of the Royal Commission ask.
Senator Small, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Can the Minister advise the Senate on the Australian Government's response so far to the Royal Commission?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thanks, Senator Small. The Government will immediately invest an additional $452.2 million as an initial step in responding to the report. This includes $18.4 million to enhance the oversight of the government's home care packages program, to deliver better value for senior Australians and the Australian taxpayer. $32 million to immediately enhance the capacity of the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission and greater regulation around the use of restraints in aged care, as we've previously committed, and $189.8 million to residential aged care providers to provide stability and maintain services, and this equates to around $760 per resident in metropolitan residential aged care and $1,145 for those in rural and regional areas.
Senator Small, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Can the minister outline what other measures the government has undertaken to implement in response to the Royal Commission?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Small. And I can. We have committed $90 million to support a viability fund to assist those facilities which are facing financial challenges, particularly as the sector begins to restructure and to respond to the changing choices of people who to live at home for longer. $91.8 million to grow the skilled and professional aged care workforce, recruiting up to 18,000 personal care workers into both home care and residential care, and $30.1 million to strengthen the governance of aged care providers and legislative governance obligations across the entire sector. Mr President, this will be a significant reform for this country and for the aged care sector. And as I've said a number of times, it is this government's determination to ensure that those reforms are undertaken, and of course, as the Prime Minister and I have said, we will respond more fully to the recommendations of the Royal Commission in the budget.
Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. 100,000 people marched for justice today around the country, calling for an end to gendered violence and for equality and safety and respect. Brittany Higgins, Rochelle Miller, many survivors, powerful women of colour speakers were there. Myself, our female senators, our Greens leader were there, as many of our staff attended. Many of the Labor MPs, their leader and their staff attended as well. Virtually no Liberal MPs attended.
Order. Sorry, Senator Waters. I'll give you it. Order on my right. Order on my right. Order. Senator Waters, I'd ask you to commence from midway through the question. I got through where you had up to staff attended.
Thank you, President. Virtually no Liberal MPs attended. I commend those who did. But the Minister for Women wasn't there, and the Prime Minister wasn't there. Despite many people travelling a long way to be there, the Prime Minister wanted women to come even further and have a closed-door meeting with him. He couldn't find 10 minutes to go and meet with them. One of the asks of the petition which I seek leave to table, signed by 70,000 people, is for action to implement the 55 recommendations of the Respect at Work inquiry. My question is, when will we see action to implement those recommendations? And I seek leave to table this 70,000-strong petition calling for that and other things.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
Thank you.
I'll call the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President, and I thank Senator Waters for her question, and indeed I do acknowledge those who have rallied in Canberra and elsewhere around the country today. I acknowledge the many important messages that were conveyed in the remarks made by various people speaking at those different rallies and events. As Senator Payne has already reinforced to the chamber, the Prime Minister invited, and the invitation continues to stand, representatives of those who organised the rally and conducted the rallies to come and to meet with him, with any other senior members of the government as they wish. And indeed that is consistent with many such protests, rallies or other events that have taken place over the years, and the work and the offer that has been made on those occasions and accepted by event organisers and activists or others on those occasions. And I would encourage those organisers of this event to reconsider their refusal to accept the Prime Minister's invitation and to have those meetings. Mr. President, in relation to the recommendations and calls for action in the petition that Senator Waters has just tabled, there are a number of those for which work is underway. I thank all senators, including Senator Waters, who cooperated with me and the government in establishing the multi-party independent review into workplace practices that was an important action to get underway and is one of those actions called for in the petition. In relation to the Respect at Work report, the government is acting on a number of those recommendations already. That includes committing $2.1 million in the 2020-21 budget to implement recommendations related to the establishment of the Respect at Work
Senator
Council.
Birmingham, time for the answers expired. Senator Waters, supplementary question.
Thanks, President. The Prime Minister's ministerial standards require ministers to act with integrity, accountability and in the public interest. The Prime Minister can call for an independent investigation into whether ministers meet those standards. Far from being a breach of the rule of law, this investigation is commonplace. It happened in the High Court. It happens across the private sector. It does not replace police investigations. It is a separate question as to whether the Attorney-General is suitable to hold the position of the highest law officer in the land. When will the Prime Minister order an independent inquiry into Minister Porter's fitness to be Attorney-General?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. I do note that the analogy is drawn, as it was by Senator Waters and is often drawn by others, between the investigation that the High Court undertook in relation to former Justice Dyson Heydon and these other matters. Indeed, the matters that the High Court investigated, as many other entities do, relate to workplace harassment matters and allegations of what occurred in that particular workplace. There is a significant difference in relation to the type of investigation you would expect conducted on those matters compared with criminal law allegations that date back a considerable period of time. The right and appropriate way for criminal law allegations to be investigated in this country is through the appropriate legal channels, and the government absolutely stands by and supports all of those independent law enforcement agencies to do their jobs.
Order, Senator Birmingham. Senator Waters, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, President. On a day when women are asking to be heard, Minister Porter is suing the female journalist and the ABC, and that sends a message about silencing women. If this is designed to alleviate pressure for an internal inquiry, it won't work. Did the Prime Minister ask Minister Porter to launch the defamation action, and was it so that the government could try to brush aside further questions by claiming this matter is before the courts?
Order. I ask for silence during the question so I can hear its terms. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, in relation to whether the Prime Minister requested any such action, I am confident the answer to that is no. In relation to the action that Mr. Porter has initiated, as I have said publicly previously, all Australians are treated equally before the law. That includes the rights of all Australians not to be defamed, and if they believe they have been defamed, to take action in relation to those matters. That's what Mr. Porter is doing.
Senator Chisholm.
Thanks, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne. When the government announced its much-anticipated support package for the tourism industry, 13 regions had been identified for support. At that time, Darwin, Adelaide, Hobart and Townsville were not included in the successful list. A document quoted by the Hobart Mercury shows that these locations were in fact originally included, but then removed by the government at the last minute. Why were Adelaide, Darwin, Hobart and Townsville dumped from the government's announcement?
The Minister representing the Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank Senator Chisholm for his question. I believe that I indicated the locations for the half-price ticket program in my earlier response. I listed those to the chamber. I indicated that the number of questions which I have received on these matters from those opposite in recent times have specifically asked about those locations. What I was going to say, Mr. President, before I completed my before my time expired in my earlier response, was that destinations were chosen in consultation with airlines in regards to relevant routes and using Austrade data to determine the regions who were most impacted by the loss of international tourists. There is capacity to add to the list based on further consultation, based on consumer demand, based on the capacity of 13 destinations.
I have Senator Payne. I have Senator Farrell on a point of order. Senator Farrell.
The point of order is relevant, Mr. President. The question is a very simple one. Why were those 4 towns, Townsville, Hobart, Adelaide and Darwin, originally on the list and taken off the list?
I'm listening very carefully to the minister's answer. I allowed you to restate that part of the question, Senator Farrell. I'm going to continue to listen, but the minister was going to the very point of the determination of which places were included, which I'm going to consider that to be directly relevant. I can't instruct you on the terms in which to answer. Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I was saying, the destinations were chosen in consultation with airlines in regards to relevant routes and using Austrade data to determine the regions most impacted by the loss of international tourists. I indicated to the chamber that there is capacity to add to the list based on further consultation, based on consumer demand and the capacity of the 13 destinations and the success of the program. As I understand it, Mr. President, the Prime Minister has said that this is in an initial list of destinations and that more routes will be added. Indeed, after further consultation with airlines, industry and advice from Austrade, Townsville, Hobart, Darwin and Adelaide have been added to the initial roll-out list.
Order. Order. Senator Payne has concluded her answer. Senator Chisholm, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr. President. In a confusing and embarrassing series of backflips, Darwin, Adelaide, Hobart and Townsville have now been re-added to the list, only days after the announcement. If these locations were chosen based on actual need rather than political targeting, why were they dumped from the original announcement only to be embarrassingly re-added?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very disappointed that those opposite do not seem to support the inclusion of Townsville, Hobart, Darwin and Adelaide. I'm deeply disappointed by that, Mr. President, because that would seem to not be particularly representative of their obligations as senators in this place.
I have Senator Wong on a point of order. Order. I'll call Senator Wong when there's silence. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. President. The point of order is direct relevance. The question isn't what the opposition's position is. The question is why the government took these locations out, then put them back in. It's a very simple proposition. Now, the Prime Minister might want to obfuscate by creating straw people arguments, but the question is, your announcement, why were they taken out and then re-added?
So, on the point of order, it is not directly relevant to be making observations about the motives of those asking questions. It is, however, directly relevant if the minister is talking about the determination of the locations. I can't instruct her to inspect a premise, but it is not directly relevant to assign a motive to the people asking a question. Senator Payne, to continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe, Mr. President, that I had said to the chamber that after further consultation with the airlines and industry and advice from Austrade, Townsville, Hobart, Darwin and Adelaide have been added to the initial roll-out list. But, Mr. President, what I don't understand is why those opposite don't support that. Why don't they support Townsville and Hobart and Darwin and Adelaide,
I have
Mr.
Senator
President?
Wong on a point of order. Order. I'll call Senator Wong when I can hear her point of order. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of order, direct relevance. You have just made a ruling that assignation of motive does not meet the direct relevance rule, and then the minister immediately goes to assigning motive. I'd ask you to pull it into order.
Senator Payne, on the point of order.
On the point of order, Mr President, what I said immediately after your ruling was, after further consultation with the airlines, industry and advice from Austrade, Townsville, Hobart, Darwin and Adelaide have been added to the initial rollout list. I'm very happy to keep saying that, Mr President.
On the point of order, Senator Watt, I'm trying to rule on your leader's point of order. The move from relevance to direct relevance has always been interpreted to contain the nature of an answer. Now, when ministers answer a question, further material that is provided, in my view, still needs to be directly relevant and to meet that test. I can't instruct a minister to accept the premise of a question, however, so the minister can answer it in the terms that a minister deems fit. But it isn't appropriate to assign a motive to a person asking the question. Senator Payne, you've concluded your answer. Senator Chisholm, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. After being dumped from the list, Darwin was re-added within hours, while Hobart and Townsville took 3 days to be re-announced. Was Senator McMahon more convincing in her arguments, or did Senators Abetz and Canavan just take longer to complain to the Prime Minister?
Order. 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 I'll call Senator Payne when I can hear her answer. Order across the chamber. Senator Watt. Senator Payne.
Mr President, I've been very clear to the chamber in relation to the addition of routes. I have also said the Prime Minister has indicated this is an initial list of destinations and more routes will be added. I indicated that further consultation with airlines, with industry and advice from Austrade enabled Townsville, Hobart, Darwin and Adelaide to be added to the initial rollout list. Mr President, what I would also say is those senators to which Senator Chisholm referred on this side are superb advocates for their communities, superb advocates for their states and their region. And, Mr President, crickets on the other side in terms of their own advocacy.
Order. Order. Senator, can we have silence so I may call Senator Roberts? Senator Roberts.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration, Senator Cash, and relates to net migration, which is the difference between the number of arrivals each year and the number of people leaving. In the October budget, the figure for net migration in 2020 to 2021 was negative 71,600. The budget made the statement that permanent migration will not resume until the second half of 2021. Minister, are these two statements still accurate?
The Minister representing the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship, Migrant Services and Multicultural Affairs, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Roberts for his question. And Senator Roberts, you would be aware that in fact it is now 12 months since we had to close the international borders due to COVID-19. As a result, there is no doubt that immigration to Australia has been impacted. This has had a number of effects, as you know. The government is completely aware of this, and I know that I have discussed this with you previously. We are doing everything that we can to keep Australians safe, and in particular in relation to the rollout of the vaccine. But from our perspective, immigration, as you know, at this point in time has been stopped as a result of COVID-19. Our priority as a government is to keep Australians safe, and that is exactly what we are doing.
Senator Roberts, a supplementary question.
The Immigration Minister's Office receives passenger manifests online daily. The Australian Bureau of Statistics data for settler arrivals has not been updated for 2021 data. I asked the Minister for Home Affairs for updated information on the 16th of February, and this information has not yet been provided. Minister, how many settler arrivals and how many other arrivals have occurred nationally in 2021 to date?
Order. Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President. And Senator Roberts, in relation to the exact figures, you did mention the Minister for Home Affairs. I would need to seek those figures from the Minister for Home Affairs. I don't represent the Minister for Home Affairs. What I can confirm, though, is the 2020-21 migration program, as I said to you in relation to the answer I provided to your first question is the migration program has had to be shaped and has had to be adapted to changing circumstances and to support Australia's economic and health recovery from COVID-19. I think you would accept that that is a fact. In terms of the migration program ceiling for 2020-2021, it has been retained at 160,000 places to maximise flexibility for program delivery. In relation to those places, what I can advise you, though, is this. 79,600 places were allocated for the skills stream, 77,300 places were allocated for the family stream, 100 places were allocated for the special eligibility stream, and 3,000 places for the child. Expired.
Senator Roberts, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. In the last 3 days, Sydney Airport processed 50 international passenger flight arrivals. Each day, Australia receives more than 10 overseas passenger flights. Arrivals and returns are broadly equal, so there can be no talk of empty planes. Now, my office is fielding a question over and over again, so I ask that question. Minister, who specifically is on these planes? Students, temporary workers, refugees, partner arrivals for migrants already here, other categories?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you. And again, Senator Roberts, you actually have asked a question that should be more appropriately directed to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs. So in relation to that, I will take the question on notice for you and provide you with what advice I can. But as you know, and I think as the Prime Minister and the Minister himself for Home Affairs, Minister Dutton, have been very, very clear in, our priority is to get as many Australians home as possible. That continues to be our priority.
Senator McMahon.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the fabulous Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Can the minister update the Senate on how the Morrison-McCormack government is continuing to support a new generation of skills reform through the extension of the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencements Wage Subsidy?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I do thank our great senator from the Northern Territory for her question. And, Mr President, I am pleased to advise the Senate that last week the Prime Minister and I announced that the Morrison government would be turbocharging our commitment to create new apprenticeships in Australia. And, Senator Wong, actually the word turbocharging is exactly what we are doing. And that is because last year in October we announced that the government would create 100,000 new apprenticeships and traineeships through our Boosting Apprentice and Commencement Wage Subsidy. It provides, Mr President, 50% of the apprentice's wage to the business that takes on the new apprentice. The program has been incredibly successful, and I would like to thank all of the employers out there, because it's the employers who have provided opportunities to these apprentices. And we created the 100,000 new commencements, Mr President, in less than 5 months. 100,000 new commencements, apprentices and trainees in less than 5 months. And, Mr President, as a result of this, we announced that we are now uncapping the program. Any business that now takes on a new apprentice or trainee up until the 30th of September 2021 will receive the 50% wage subsidy for a full 12 months. Mr President, we've seen the creation of over now 100,000 new apprenticeships and traineeships within that 5-month period. And what we now want to see is the creation of tens of thousands of more. Mr President, this is all part of the skills-led recovery, getting us out of COVID-19. This is about backing opportunities for Australians, particularly young Australians, but also helping Australian businesses get the workers with the skills that they need. And this, of course, is, I said, thanks to the fantastic employers out there. Around 40,000 of them have put their hand up and have taken on a new apprentice or trainee into their business.
Senator McMahon, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister explain to the Senate how this builds on essential support being provided to keep Australian apprentices on the tools and in work through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, Senator McMahon is right. It does exactly do that. It builds on measures that we've already got in place. And of course, the first measure that we put in place was our Supporting Apprentices and Trainees wage subsidy. That has now kept around 122,000 apprentices and trainees in work in around 60,000 small and medium businesses across Australia. And these, of course, would be apprentices and trainees that, but for this government's support, would have been let go, because the first people to be let go during a pandemic, COVID-19, are of course apprentices and trainees. In relation to the Building Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy, I can advise that the initiative has so far supported the creation of over 8,000 bricklayers, 6,000 electricians and almost 11,000 people in retail and hospitality work. They are people that, but for the wage subsidy, may not have been taken on. But employers, because of the wage subsidy, have been able to put up their hand and take on that new apprentice or trainee into their business.
Has expired. Senator McMahon, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline how these investments are continuing to support Australia's economic prosperity into the future?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, the Morrison government is providing record levels of funding to our vocational education and training sector to rebuild our economy, but to also prepare for the future. This includes the Boosting Apprenticeships Wage Subsidy, as I've talked about, the Supporting Apprentices and Trainees Wage Subsidy and the $1 billion Job Trainer Fund. And that was, of course, the $1 billion fund that we put together with the states and territories to create around 320,000 additional places, that is, new places in the training market that are either free or low fee. Working with the states and territories, all states and territories signed up to the $1 billion fund. And the key to the success of this, of course, was ensuring that those training places were in areas of skills demand. In other words, people are actually training so that they can get a job, training in areas of demand that will get them a job. Mr President, we are providing record funding to vocational education and training in Australia because, as the Prime Minister has said, this is a skills-led recovery.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. In 2019, when answering a question on women and the reporting of rape, Mr Morrison said, and I quote, "One of the things that often happens with that is they're not believed and their stories are not believed. And it's important that their stories are believed and that they know that if they come forward, their stories will be believed." When deciding whether the Attorney-General was a fit and proper person to remain in his role, why did the Prime Minister listen to the Attorney-General but not bother to read the alleged victim's own words?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, Mr President, as I said in relation to the response to Senator Waters' questions earlier, we have in Australia, with sound legal and other establishments in place, practices and processes that are well established for the handling of allegations. The Prime Minister and his office acted in accordance with advice from law enforcement agencies that allegations of a criminal nature ought be provided, where possible, to police at the earliest opportunity, and that is what the Prime Minister's office did.
Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
The former Solicitor-General, Justin Gleeson, has said the allegations against the Attorney-General should have been referred to the Solicitor-General. Given John Howard had no issue with twice asking the Solicitor-General for advice on allegations against his Workplace Relations Minister, why has the Prime Minister failed to listen to advice and refer the allegations against his Attorney-General to the Solicitor-General?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, the allegations in question are allegations of and relating to an alleged criminal event dating back to 1988. And the Solicitor-General or indeed any other individual office holder outside of a court and its legal process is not in a position to be able to determine the veracity of those allegations. That's what we have
Order.
courts for.
Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Why won't the Prime Minister establish an independent inquiry into the sexual assault allegations against his Attorney-General, which would listen to the complaint and consider the alleged victim's own words and the testimony of James Hook and others?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Mr President, as I've said in a few answers now, we have established legal processes to handle such allegations. As I also said in response to Senator Waters' question earlier, the Attorney-General has exercised the same rights as any other Australian in relation to the initiation of defamation proceedings, and I have no doubt that such matters will be heard in a court of law in accordance with all of the normal rules of that court of law in the future at some point.
Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Sport, Senator Colbeck. Can the Minister advise the Senate what the recent announcement by the International Olympic Committee about the 2032 Olympics means for Queensland and the rest of Australia?
The Minister for Sport, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Senator, for the question. Australians and Queenslanders in particular, Mr President, Senator McGrath, are excited by the International Olympic Committee announcing that South East Queensland is the preferred bidder for the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics. This decision means that we are now a step closer to hosting the Olympic and Paralympic Games, with the IOC entering into exclusive negotiations with Queensland for the 2032 event. The announcement is a game-changing development for the bid, which has been long supported by all levels of government. Since the government announced its support for the bid in 2019, we've been working with the Queensland Government, the councils of South East Queensland, as well as the Australian Olympic Committee and the Paralympics and Paralympics Australia to put forward the best possible bid for South East Queensland in 2032. Not only will this event etch a new chapter in Australia's sporting history, as it did with Melbourne in 1956 and Sydney 2000, it will also deliver an economic boost for jobs in Queensland, Mr President, and for Australia. Today's announcement, the announcement from the IOC, is a positive development, but we still have a lot of work to do. The Australian government will, over coming weeks and months, continue to work closely and cooperatively with the bid partners during the exclusive negotiation period. Mr President, we want to make sure that we don't miss this golden opportunity for South East Queensland, all of Queensland and, in fact, indeed, for all of Australia.
Senator McGrath, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister explain how securing the 2032 Olympics will build on the work done by the government to showcase our nation to the world?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Australia has a rich history of hosting world-class international sporting events. The 1956 Melbourne Olympics and the Sydney 2000 were enormously successful and gave significant confidence to our nation. In recent years, Australia has hosted the AFC Asian Cup in 2015, the 2018 Invictus Games, the 2018 Commonwealth Games and the ICC Women's T20 World Cup. Next year we will host the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup and the UCI Road Cycling World Championships. In 2023 we will co-host the FIFA Women's World Cup and in 2026 the UCI BMX World Championships. We are also in with a great show of securing the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
Senator McGrath, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline what are the next steps in securing the 2032 Olympics for Queensland?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Senator McGrath, for the question. While the IOC announcement was very welcome news, Mr President, there remains a lot more work to be done to secure the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics for Australia and Queensland. The Australian Government is continuing to work with the Queensland Government, the South East Council of Mayors, the Australian Olympics Committee and Paralympics Australia, as the exclusive negotiations or targeted dialogue with the IOC occurs over the coming weeks and months. The targeted dialogue specifically addresses our capacity to host the 2032 Games and conveys our preferred host status. Only the South East Queensland bid has this status, Mr President. We are very clear that we must continue to work hard, outlining our vision for a successful 2032 Olympics so that our bid can be successful when the winning bidders are announced later this year.
Senator Walsh.
Question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Today, despite repeated attempts by this government to undermine and delegitimise her experience, Ms Higgins spoke to thousands of women at the March for Justice and called for action. Will the Morrison government now stop shifting blame and listen to Ms Higgins?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. And Mr President, indeed, the government respects very much the statements made by Ms Higgins, and can I say that I appreciate the engagement of quite a number of staff representatives and former staff in relation to the establishment of the independent review that the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Ms Kate Jenkins, is undertaking on behalf of the Parliament in relation to parliamentary workplaces and the input made both publicly and privately of some of those former staff as well as current staff into the terms of reference, and the nature and the conduct of that review is greatly valued, and I now hope that the manner in which that review has been stood up can provide confidence to individuals to participate fully in the review process and to share their experiences as the terms of reference invites them to do so, and to work with Ms Jenkins as she independently assesses recommendations that can be brought forward to the government and this parliament in terms of action to be taken. We have also, as an interim measure, put in place a new hotline to handle critical incidents and provided details to parliamentary staff, both current and former, in terms of their ability to use that service and to reach out to that service, which has staff who are equipped to handle trauma counselling type matters, who have been trained and advised in relation to the referral services that are available, such that they can assist in referral, be they of criminal matters through appropriate pathways with appropriate support, or be they of harassment, workplace bullying or other matters which can be referred again appropriately through for investigation and assessment, again with appropriate support.
Senator Walsh, a supplementary question.
Today, Ms Higgins spoke of watching the people she had dedicated her life to deny and downplay her experience in question time. The Minister for Women, Senator Payne, has said that, and I quote, "The only way it will change is if we as parliamentarians own the problems, own the failings and make the necessary changes." And she repeated those comments today. Exactly when will the Morrison government listen to Australian women and own its failings?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, indeed, we do, as Senator Payne has rightly said, both in her International Women's Day address but also in question time today, need to acknowledge that we all have a responsibility in relation to the many issues that have been raised over recent weeks in particular. We have a responsibility to ensure that this place sets an example for the nation in terms of the type of workplace practices that are here, workplace practices that need to ensure, as far as possible, that we stamp out instances of bullying, sexual harassment or sexual assault, that we provide appropriate support services and investigatory services and support where such instances continue, and that we set example in all of those processes, procedures and practices for others to follow. That's the type of work that I'm committed to supporting, and I trust that Ms Jenkins, in the review she's undertaking, will deliver recommendations that assist us in that regard.
Senator Walsh, a final supplementary question.
The Morrison government didn't listen to Ms Higgins when she needed support after the alleged rape, didn't listen when she went public with her experience, instead calling her a lying cow, and even today refused to listen when she spoke at their very doorstep. Why is the Morrison government refusing to listen to the voices of Australian women calling for justice?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Mr President, we certainly are committed to supporting Ms Higgins and cooperating and assisting with the police investigation that is underway as extensively and fully as we possibly can. The government has always been willing to cooperate and assist in relation to those investigations. We are also determined to continue our work in relation to the broader issues, not just those in the parliament that I've referenced in the previous two answers, but those more generally across the community. I was asked earlier about the Respect at Work report, and we are implementing the first 9 recommendations of that report. Many others that apply to the private sector. We are working with the private sector in relation to aspects of that. We are pursuing implementation of those around training resources. We are seeking to make sure the portal with information for employers and employees on how to eliminate and deal with sexual harassment, and the establishment of the Respect at Work Council that I referenced before.
Order.
We are committed to working on all of these issues.
Has expired. Senator Birmingham.
And I ask that further questions be placed on notice.